Hey, I'm Drew with Upshot Coffee, and today I'm going to be going over our 16-gram base pour-over recipe. Today I'm using my April brewer, but this recipe should work with just about every brewer that you would want to use. Works with the flat bottoms, the conicals. You may just need to adjust the time of the pour slightly. This is usually my go-to for whenever I'm at home or I have a new brewer or a new coffee. This is basically the recipe that I'll always turn to when I don't know what to use. So we're going to use 16 grams of coffee. I ground this at 22 clicks on the Comandante. I can put a note about what that grind size is on some other grinders. And then I'm using 200-degree water, and I prefer the third wave water as my water of choice. It does make a pretty big difference, so I would highly encourage you guys to test that out. We're going to be doing 16 grams of coffee to 260 grams of water. I split it up into 3 pours. I'm doing a bloom, followed by 2 pours of half circle and then half center. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but we'll get into the recipe here. So I'm going to start my timer, and then for the bloom, I'm just going to start in the center, spiral around, make sure I'm getting all the coffee evenly saturated. And really the goal of this pour is just to saturate all the coffee. If you go slightly over, under, not really a big deal. You just want to make sure that everything's evenly saturated, because this will allow us to maintain a balanced extraction during the brew. If we don't saturate all the coffee and we leave a dry patch, this might be under extracted during the brew because it wasn't saturated initially. So it's important to make everything even and then prime the brew for the next 2 pours. I have 45 seconds here. We'll start our first pour. I like to start in the middle and then move into that large circle. We'll do that for 50 grams. Slow down and come to the middle, and now I'm just pouring in the center, like a tight small circle in there, to a weight of 160. I try to finish this pour around a minute to a minute 5, and we will repeat this pour again at a minute and a half. Depending on how fast your coffee is draining, you may want to start the pour slightly earlier. If it is draining pretty quickly, I usually like to start the second pour at a minute and a half, or if I start to see the bed, I'll pour it a little early. So we're coming up at a minute and a half here. Do the same thing, big circle pour for 50 grams, and then a nice tight circle in the middle for my total weight of 260 grams. Ending with that center pour will make everything a little more even. It'll also allow you to be very accurate with your pour. Being able to just pour in the center, you don't have to focus too much on your technique, and you can really wait until you're right on the 260 mark, and that should help you with consistency. Now we're just going to wait for the coffee to draw down and drain. This drawdown will depend mainly on what kind of coffee you're using and a little bit of the brewer as well. Really, depending on what brewer you're using, it could finish anywhere from like 2.5 minutes to 4.5, depending on the density of the coffee and the brewer. This one's draining pretty quickly, but really anything within that window is fine, as long as it's balanced for the specific coffee. So if your cup is not balanced, you find some flavors that are like sour or salty, you probably have a brew that's under extracted. And in that case, you'd want to change your grind first, and you would make it finer to increase that extraction. On the other hand, if it's over extracted, you're getting bitter flavor or like a dry texture is usually a good sign of over extraction. In that case, you would want to make your grind coarser and just try the same thing again. Usually I try to only change one variable at a time until I get a cup that's balanced, sweet, and still has nice acidity. brew is done here right around 3.5 minutes. I try to wait until there's about 1 drip per second. And this might be just a little quicker than that, but I'm going to pull it here. So then we have our finished brew. If this brew is not completely to your liking, there are a few ways that you can tweak it. We already talked about how to change the extraction, but if you like the extraction and you find that it's still a little too weak for you, you can always add more coffee into the dose. You could do something like 17 or 18 grams in instead of 16. And if it's too strong, you can always use less coffee, something more like 15 or 14 grams. And the recipe should hold up well. You just might need to change your grind accordingly. So yeah, that's about it for today. I hope you enjoyed. Cheers.